How you doing, sir?
Just fine. And you?
I'm doing outstanding. Got a lively program today. We got a couple of things that we're going to be talking about, so I'm excited, and I'm actually excited to see the end result of this conversation because I think that it's going to be very well received, and I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it, so I'm excited.
No pressure at all.
Okay, so the first question, Neville often talked about, in my Father's house there are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would not have stated it, and so I go prepare a place for you. Let's talk about those mansions. When you hear those many mansions, what does that mean to you?
It's attitudes. It's all the attitudes of man. That's all it is. It's a shift. It's just you're shifting from one state to another state of consciousness. And that's all it is. It's just states of consciousness. And in my Father's house are many mansions, as he said, and that's a state of consciousness. So you're on all the time. But what state of consciousness are you in all the time? or even most of the time? Because that's going to be your future. You see, what we have to understand is we're always thinking ahead of our evidence, suggesting to ourselves ahead of evidence. But do you recognize the evidence of what you started? See, because it's always you doing what you're doing, being what you're being. That's your everydayness experiencing. But you have been given an out. And that is, change your mind, change your world. And that's now.
So in that, from Genesis to Revelation, then, what we have is a series of attitudes leading to the person of Christ. Is that correct?
You're finding out who you are. That's what this whole play of humanity is to find out who you are. And you can only do that in the silence. That's why I say that magic is in the silence, because that's where you make the contact. If you're always on, you're not going to be interrupted. You see, God's given you choose this day, and he's not going to interrupt you. You have to ask. It says you receive not because you ask not, or that you're asking amiss, meaning you're running off the mouth about something.
So that asking amiss, we can actually create a lifestyle of asking amiss. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's anyone who's having a problem is exactly what they did. They assembled, they built this virtual reality, because remember, we're told that it is as within, so without. So everything on the without, we're told, is secondhand. It was only new as idea. So if you want to change to a new idea, just change the method of your talking to yourself, of suggesting to yourself, because you are doing so, moment by moment. That's how your future is being assembled, is by moment, what you're thinking feelingly. Just being aware is very beneficial.
You've often said it, attitude awareness and imaginational control, and that's all that's truly about, is being aware. Is that correct?
That's it. Just being aware. And in fact, if you really are watching what you're talking to yourself about, you're going to find it most of the time it's about nothing. I mean, it's really not aimed. It's not directed. And that's what you need. You need your conversations to be directed toward what you're looking for, rather than what's going on around you. Because, you see, what has your attention has your life. So if you want to live your life, you have to take your attention in tow and stick with it. Because that's where you're operating from, the theater of mind, in imagination. That's God. He is the imagination. He's the producer of all things. So, who's better than the best you've yet known, I'd suggest.
You said something a few moments ago, and you said anyone experiencing problems. Initially, we were talking about people acting amiss. And if we're experiencing issues or problems in our lives, then we can know that our acting is off target. We have another name for that, and we call that sin. But we've made sin such an evil word, but it's really not that. It's really quite simple.
That's right. It is. What was it? Wasn't sin an archery term?
Absolutely.
And what did sin mean? You missed the target. And that's what you want a better aim. You want a better suggesting to yourself. Because you are in the act of suggesting to yourself, aware or unaware. Oh, hello. I just got a visitor here. It's a spider. He's right here on my recorder here. I've never seen one like that. Very interesting. Just kind of weird looking.
Apparently enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, he's not moving. He's just, oh, okay. Well, hang in there. I'm sorry, I got a soft subject there.
So we were actually talking about sin and missing the mark, and you were stating that, of course, it was an archery term that basically meant that you were off target. And so basically our goal should be at that point, if we see that we are off target, is get back on target. Now, how does one get back on target?
Well, the thing of it is to switch immediately. Like you said, when you notice it, turn right then and there. Because if you wait a few seconds, well, then you'll be carried away in whatever it was that came up. You see, what you're thinking upon builds, and that's good or otherwise. So you want to remember that, too, because it's all creative. Every word, we're told, must be accounted for. So that means it has merit. So if you don't want to see it in your world, then don't speak it. Don't think it. Don't bond with it, because you will experience it. You see, like I said, you're always thinking ahead of your evidence. And if you recognize the evidence as what you were thinking, you just discovered how to cause desired change. Right there. You agree?
I do. And you said something earlier, and I don't know if it's lazy-mindedness or whatever, but there tends to be a resistance to going into the silence. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, you'll fail again and again and again. But the point is that if you're really willing to stick with it until you see that you're getting a benefit from it, from then on, it'll be a pleasure every time you think about it. As a matter of fact, just finding the time to steal away and be quiet, that'll be your big chore right there. Just finding the time. But it's always there. You know, I always said I didn't have time to do this and didn't have time to do that. But, you know, actually, once you start, actually I found I had a whole person didn't have much to do. Because we con ourselves into the fact that later, we'll do this later. But, you know, later comes in, oh, are you ready now? See, I know this because I went through this. Again and again and again, I'd forget. And the thing of it is that if it's really with you, the moment it's needed, it's there. If you remember it. But that's what you got to do. You got to remember it. You got to remember what you're doing. You're feeling after. You're seeking to find. Find what? What are you looking for? A better life? Well, it's right with you. It was given you in the beginning. You were a child born of a woman, then you got it. But you have to recognize it. You have to ask. Remember, you receive not because you ask not, or you're asking amiss. And the asking amiss, that's something we're all playing with all the time. Because, 1 minute you're for it, and the next minute it's not within your future. But you're always thinking ahead of your evidence. Make that your primary thought, that you're thinking ahead of evidence that you will be experiencing.
I think one of the other things that we have a challenge with, you were saying that once you make it a habit of going into the silence, it becomes easier to do, and you can almost do it at will. And there was that train of thought years ago that Jesus told the disciples, take no thought of what you should say when you're before the authorities and so forth. And people were under the impression that they didn't have to go into the silence, they didn't have to study, they didn't have to meditate. They could just go before somebody, and what they needed to say would just come out of them. But kind of hearing what you're saying is that when you make it a habit of the study, when you make it a habit of going into the silence, when you make it a habit of thinking better than the best you know, then that's what comes out of you. Would you agree?
Actually, it's like when we started. I said, have you got a question? I don't know what the question's going to be, but I know I'll have the answer. Because it's not coming to me, it's coming through me. Just as your world is coming through you, not to you. It's as you think you are. As she thinks she is. As he thinks he is. You see, we don't necessarily think alike, but we all think feelingly. And that's what subconscious mind uses to create your world of experiencing. So if you don't want to see it in your world, I suggest don't entertain it, because it'll be your future.
Back to the topic of many mansions and states and so forth, how does one make the transition, as it were, let's say a state of poverty? Because I had a conversation with somebody recently, and they were saying, well, DeCarlo, how can I make the transition? Right now, if I don't have any money in my bank account, how can I begin thinking from a place of prosperity? So I'll let you address that.
Place to start. We're always thinking ahead of our evidence. Are you saying to yourself, I don't have any money, I'm broke, I'm down, I'm out, I'm not employed? See, if that's what you're thinking about, that's what you'll keep experiencing. Change your mind, change your world. Changing your mind is changing what you're thinking about. We're assuming that if you're choosing it, it's what you want. But if you're just sitting around thinking of what's going wrong and how it's not going right, you're right. That's exactly it. That's exactly what will keep going. But if you think differently, it'll switch. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I said it's simple. You're thinking this, and you just stop it and start thinking something different. That's simple. But it's not easy because we're so conditioned, so mesmerized, so hypnotized. Conditioned to what? To other people's ideas. But there is a time when you have to start thinking for yourself, first person. You can listen to everybody, but you're the one who's to discern, to actually get the essence of what is being said. That's your salvation. Everyone is looking for the same thing, how to cause desired change. And that's how you do it. As you think, you are. You're entering in and thinking from the new state, and you do so consistently, persistently, as you can. Because I know you're not paying attention all the time. Who is? But that is the idea, is paying attention.
You and I both agree. We do this all the time. You said, and I often laugh and chuckle, that Dr. Murphy said that if you desire a hamburger, then the hamburger becomes the salvation. It's the thing that you want. If it's a glass of water, then of course the glass of water is the thing that you want. That becomes your salvation. Even if it's, let's say, a more abundant life becomes your salvation. We think, I want a hamburger. We go out, get in the car, and go down to the local restaurant, get the hamburger, and we have the hamburger. Or we go into the refrigerator, get the ground beef, make a hamburger patty, and we make the hamburger. But we think that it operates or that it's different when it comes to manifesting money, for example. But it's no different. Would you agree?
Whatever you're thinking about, you're creating.